The following conversation is for educational purposes only and not intended to replace therapy or other mental health services. Viewer discretion is advised.
We need feedback in relationships. We need feedback from our partners. Is the environment that the relationship taking place in healthy for the relationship? Being in the service is, stressful in relationships and under all but the best circumstances. And then you factor in a deployment or something like that. That's a lot of pressure for a couple that is still building the foundation of their relationship.
All right, guys, welcome back to One the Night. This is part of the multi-series episodes where we go through people's journeys. We divide them into multiple episodes, and in this case, we're back with at this point episode 6 with Air Force veteran and trauma therapist Curley Lawson. Welcome back once again.
Yeah, man, Josh. Well, welcome and thank you. I guess maybe I should welcome you, but yeah, it's good to be back. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity.
There's a lot of things that we could talk about endlessly, and so we kind of had a moment to really figure out what we wanted to do for this one. We talked a lot about, we wrapped up kind of like some of your life experiences, and obviously there's more to it than that, but there are some topics that we missed talking about. So for this one, we were going to highlight the differences and the dynamics of the couples therapy versus family therapy and individual therapy, and kind of like the nuances of each category. So I think the best place to start then is with couples therapy. And when do you see people normally in that, like, finding that they need couples therapy, and what does it entail?
Yeah, so couples therapy is a different animal than individual therapy, because in couples therapy there's a relationship in distress. So I would and that can be very different than in individual therapy, where there's an individual in distress. So because now it's about a relationship, and a relationship that's not working and may be dysfunctional for a variety of reasons, and helping a couple work through and process that can be very different than individual therapy. So if you consider someone going to individual therapy, they probably have something that can be diagnosed with the DSM-5. So there might be depression, anxiety, PTSD. I mean, like, these are things that are pretty common that we see. In couples therapy, there might not be an individual diagnosis for either person. It could just be they have a dysfunctional relationship and they're looking for resolution, which I understand, and very often couples understand that. The other thing that can happen in couples therapy, and I've seen it fairly often, is one or both parties have an issue that requires individual therapy that has not been addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I would let them know that couples therapy is not a substitute for individual therapy. And sometimes, I would have to explain to, one or both of them, well, you're not actually ready for couples therapy yet. There's some things that might be so, problematic individually that they have to work on that before they're at a point that they can work on a relationship.
That part is very, very important, because I didn't know that, and that was something that I was doing couples therapy before my individual therapy started, and I think that's actually kind of what I figured out, was that there were some things that I realized, like, during this, we don't have the time. Like, I did notice, and this is probably just inexperience, as I mentioned to you, I had unfortunately during COVID was when I was going through looking for a couples therapist, and that just was such a volatile time for, I think, everybody. The therapists were booked out like 6 months. The experienced ones, like marriage counselors and all that, they had been booked out minimum 6 months in advance, and it's like, we don't have that time. We don't have that long. And so I went, and we said, well, let's do whatever is available because something is better than nothing. And so one of the things that we went into was my partner then was in their individual therapy, but also there was I hadn't gone through individual therapy either. So when I had gone in there, we had I don't know if it was maybe just the inexperience because he was still getting his hours, and at first, like, I was saying my piece, and then they were saying their piece, and um, there was I noticed even then, like, oh, a lot of it's focused on me, like like the therapy side of it is like, oh, well, tell me about that, tell me about this, and I was like, and I said, well, maybe she might want to also hear what's going, like, she might also want to be heard too, and so that was something that I kind of had to say out loud, and I realized that was very focused on me, and that's when I thought, well, I should just I should also then be in therapy, because if there's a lot of stuff that is happening that I haven't processed and is coming up during the relationship, has a lot to do with my own stuff. So if I had known that, I think that would have also been a different approach. And
Right.
I think that's a very interesting thing that I hope that other people that listen to this will take into account, that it isn't a replacement. Because from my understanding, or my belief anyway, was that, well, therapy is therapy. That's how I saw it.
Man. So that idea that therapy is therapy, if if you had if you had a really, if your throat was sore, inflamed, you could look in and see that it's red. Would you go to a podiatrist? I mean, because a doctor is a doctor. So
Yeah, right.
I mean, so that's I get that misconception, and it's something that we hear like very frequently. So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't do that could be very helpful is just simply ask the therapist, like their experience as a couples therapist rather, what their training is, or theoretical beliefs or things like that. It's not something that has to be really dived into a lot in that first session, but getting a sense of, okay, well, what does the therapist bring me that is of value, and to make sure that you're not seeing an ear, nose, and throat specialist when you need a podiatrist, so vice versa. So, so asking about that is really important. And another thing that happens, in couples therapy is there can frequently be an expectation that the therapist is going to fix the relationship. And it my first session, I would tell them, I know there will be one of three outcomes. Things will get better, things will stay the same, or things will get worse. I said I've never seen it be anything other than one of those three outcomes. And the outcome that you all get to depends on you.
Right.
So of just letting them know, yep, we understand there could be outcomes, but I'm not fixing anything. It is them working towards that agreed upon solution, and even understanding the nature of the problem. So they come in, there's working on a relationship. I didn't do it all the time, but frequently I would write one word on a sheet of paper, fold that sheet of paper in half. So the couple come in, and we seat them and greet them and get them comfortable and everything. And I would ask, like, what's the presenting issue? What are y'all like, what brings you to therapy? And not absolutely, but typically they would say one word, and that word would be communication. And I would reach over to this piece of paper and I would unfold it, and I would show them that I'd written the words of communication. And not to like, oh my God, like I'm a wizard or anything,
All right.
but most people believe that when they go to couples therapy, they're going because of a communication problem. And that's typically not the case. It's typically not a communication problem. Or if it is a communication problem, it might be, one is communicating and the other isn't, but it's typically not just, the inability to communicate, which is something that people say, because I go like, yeah, you both got here at the same time, sometimes in different cars. I mean, like I know you are communicating. Let's go beneath communication. What's there? what emotions are there, what, is there hurt, is there resentment, is there, is there fear, is someone being held back, are there, unmet expectations, are there too many expectations? Like, those are very real issues in relationship that communication, you know might not resolve. I mean, if you talk about, if one person says, well, I have unmet expectations, okay, that's been communicated. Now what? So helping them understand that yes, communication is a part of the relationship, but it's typically not the problematic part. And also, I will point out, it's very rare that a relationship started at the point that it needed couples therapy. It's like, you're probably better before, at some point, if they're married or, been together for a while, something got you together. Let's explore that. What's healthy? What can we go back to? And using even the theories behind couples therapy are very different than individual therapy. So explaining that in the assessments that we do for couples therapy, because we're actually assessing the relationship. And one of the challenges, and it's something that you mentioned that can occur in couples therapy, is, well, what happens if one person believes the therapist is aligned with their partner and not with them? And to keep couples therapy from devolving into like a 2 against 1, because now it's really uncomfortable. Now it's like the partner, but also the therapist. And most people don't want to spend $150 an hour to go and have 2 people beat up on them for an hour. So
I'm sorry to cut you off. That part is exactly what happened. It was and I sensed it too, right? And I could feel from my partner at the time's reaction was also that this felt like 2 against 1 against her. And so that's why at one point I said, well, I don't want it to be that. I don't think that's fair. And so, I did say out loud, I did tell him, maybe she might want to maybe she feels like unheard, because she's very much the opposite of me. I'm more outspoken, and she was more internalized when she was upset. And so I would read that, like, it felt like she was kind of being isolated, and therapist was kind of the couples therapist was kind of like listen to me and be like, yeah, that's that can be an issue. And I'd be like, well, this is my stance on it. You're like, yeah, that's understandable. And then kind of like it was more like, so spending more time with me. And so I noticed that too, and I was like, I don't know, this doesn't feel fair. So I did end up having to say that. And again, it could just be the inexperience, but that I think that's what also was part of the dynamic that made it feel like, yeah, this is done, because it's 2 now against the 1. And yeah, that wasn't, I don't think, the goal for either of us.
Right. Yeah. And so how we conceptualize those experiences can prevent that from happening, because if someone's walking away feeling like, man, the therapist doesn't get me, and to be fair, we might not always get every client every time. I mean, we're like, therapists are human and and infallible, so that might be the case. But it's the therapist's job to get everyone. It's the therapist's job to notice, does it feel fair? And even ask, I will ask, man, does this feel fair? Do you feel heard of my clients? And for therapists, learning to give themselves that permission to say that in the session is really important, because that's valuable feedback to even notice. If I'm working with you and a partner, if I go like, Josh, it seems like you're like uncomfortable in a way that you haven't been before right now. Help me understand what's going on with you. That's significant. We need those moments. But if I sit there, if I'm in the office with you and I notice that you seem really uncomfortable or frustrated or anything, and I don't allow that to come out so it can be used, that's a disservice to you. So, uh, and 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 so therapy, and just like other aspects of every helping field, someone can be a great individual therapist, but maybe not a great couples therapist. Someone can be an amazing couples therapist, but maybe struggle as a family therapist or like group therapy. I've managed groups that had 20 people in them and just kept things moving and going, and some other therapists struggle with that. So each of us, we're not, as a therapist, we can be great but maybe not great at everything all the time. And even for therapists that are great, because there might be someone listening right now going, no, that's not true, I'm great at all things all the time. Even that person might not be the best fit for a couple, just like we're not always the best fit for an individual.
Right.
And as a therapist, if I recognize I'm not a good fit with this individual, it's my responsibility to refer them to someone else. Same thing with the couples therapist. If I recognize I'm just not a really good fit with this couple, it is then my responsibility to refer them to someone else. And so that maybe that should have happened and it didn't happen. And so I'm not quite sure what happened in like with your particular case, but the therapist, one of the things that I would teach my interns is that they own what's going on in that room. Like when they're working with anyone, and that people are coming to therapists, for their expertise as therapists. We don't have to be an expert in anyone's life. You are an expert in your life. So I don't I'm never gonna know Josh the way you know Josh ever. I mean, I could spend the rest of my life trying to get to know you, but I never know you the way that you know you. So you're the expert on you. But the therapist, we're the expert on clinical processes, and it's our job, it's our responsibility to use those clinical processes correctly. And if we don't or we can't, then it's our responsibility to get the training, get the assistance, get the feedback to be able to use them.
And so you mentioned that, a lot of times you said that communication is the initial complaint or the initial
Oh, sure.
talk about why they're in couples therapy. But ultimately, what have you noticed it comes down to really, if not communication? Is it that they are not, I guess they're triggering each other in ways they're not aware? Are they is it more so that they are interpreting things, certain things in ways that they aren't meant? What is it that you see more commonly than if it's not communication?
Well, I want you and anyone watching or listening to this, I want you to imagine two things. So one is a plastic plant. Imagine a plastic orchid. And next to that plastic orchid, imagine a real living orchid. Which of those orchids are going to be easier to take care of?
Ideally, the plastic one.
But which one will give you the greater joy?
Oh, the real one, yeah.
Exactly. So what's important, that one of the things that I've noticed is like, well, man, what do people want? Do they want the easily maintained, looks pretty, dusted every now and then plastic orchid, or do they want the care and turn, water properly, rotated in the sun, orchid? And sometimes people have, if one person wants that plastic orchid, looks good, dusted, gotta go, and the other wants that real orchid because they put work into it, like already that dynamic tension between them is going to cause a problem. So really what I see, it's not a lack of, it's not communication as the issue, is understanding where the other is. This is something that happened very often working with vets. Someone has, deployed. They may have a diagnosis of PTSD. Something happened during deployment. I like to tell people war is not a tragedy. War is 10,000 tragedies happening at once. So someone, the deployed member, the deployed partner has gone through something, catastrophic. They come home. Their partner's there, loves them, wants to support them. And they're saying, tell me all about it. Tell me everything. The person that's gone through that traumatic event is saying, I cannot tell you. I cannot tell you all of that. And so when I dive down with that, I go like, you have two people that are both trying to help and protect the other. One person is saying, tell me everything, help me understand, let me be there for you. They want to support, they love them, they want to help. The other is saying, I cannot tell you this. It was so harmful to me. It could be harmful to you. It could change the way you perceive me. It puts me at risk. It puts us at risk. So they have this tug of war. Each is pulling the other, and they have the best intentions. They want to help. They want to protect. In that instance, helping them understand the thing to do, both of you put down the rope and acknowledge what the other is doing. You want to know all of these things because you want to help and support me. I love and appreciate you for that. The other is, you're not telling me this because you believe it could harm me. I love and appreciate you for that. And now you got two people that are much closer to being on the same page to get to the point of when you're ready, how about tell me what you can? All right. And just occasional reminder of, I'm willing to listen, and I know you think it might be harmful for me. It might not be, but I'm willing to listen. And now you have two people that are coming closer together. That plastic orchid is now the live orchid. So those are the things that I see that are not necessarily like, communication. It is that deeper understanding of things like emotional attunement. Are we responding to each other the way that we used to respond to each other? Because people can communicate. Someone can say, what would you like for breakfast? And it can be said in a manner that is uplifting and supportive and like, man, this person cares about me. Someone could say, what do you want for breakfast? And it can be said in a manner that says, I don't care what they cook, I'm not going to eat it because they're probably going to poison me. I mean, like so it's not the sentence, it is the meaning behind that sentence. So getting back to that point, though, that's really what I see. I can't say like the most, it would be easy if I could say, oh, this is the greater thing, but it is those levels of emotional connection and coming together and going apart. So people, couples will rupture about something, and we've seen it in public. There's a miscommunication, something is said, someone's feelings are hurt or something like that. They pull away from each other, then they come back together, and it's like, at the restaurant, I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, something at work was on my mind, whatever, and that coming back together. When we have that space, that safety of being able to come back together, then we can come back together. But if we don't feel safe, if we don't feel emotionally safe, we don't want to get back together. I mean, how excited are you to talk to someone when you know they're going to yell at you?
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
And too, just another question about that, because and this is more so my understanding in hindsight, and it's more so that it seems as though when people come to at least for my scenario, when people come to couples therapy, there has been some level of resentment that has been established, and that resentment has a lot to do with like you said, how somebody says something to you, and when they used to maybe be more, and they ask let's say for example, what you want for breakfast, they used to say it in a much more loving manner, and it used to be because at that point you still didn't feel that resentment towards that person because you didn't know them that well, and well, because you didn't they hadn't done something that was activating or felt hurtful in any way. And so that stuff, I think that the buildup of the not having the conversation when it happens, and then being heard, felt like they are heard. A buildup of that over and over again creates that separate tone of I'm speaking to somebody who doesn't get me and
Yeah.
speaking to somebody that doesn't listen to me and doesn't care about me. And that's that resentment, is the two people back and forth saying things, but the other person not. I remember it's like hearing, like with my partner, like it's like we're saying the same thing in different languages, and we're not like understanding what each person is saying until the thing happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, I, I I love your questions and your observations, because every time it's like, oh, there's so much there to unpack. So, but, well, so let me begin a little more unpacking. So one of the leading relationship researchers, John Gottman, and his wife, they've done like years of relationship research out at the University of Washington. And and I don't have that information directly in front of me, so this is speaking very generally, so my apologies to the Gottmans if I'm off of some of the numbers. But one of the things that they learned is through their research is roughly 70% of things that couples fight about never get resolved. That's important to note. That's huge, because literally when we pick our partners, we are picking our problems. And it doesn't mean that we can't approach things or resolve things, but some things are not going to change. So even acknowledging that, like, there's only so much change that is going to happen, and people change over time. So, a couple that's been together for 20 years and they're fighting, and one of the things that I point out is that you're not the people that you were 20 years ago.
Right.
Has that relationship grown over time? Are you with someone that is now 20 years older and you're trying to have a relationship from 20 years ago? I don't know how that could possibly work. Has the relationship grown and changed as they've grown and changed? The other thing that I really, really emphasize with couples is your relationship does not have to look like, feel like, be like anyone else's relationship. Have your relationship. So this is a challenge, because people probably, before they come to couples therapists, they talk to family, they talk to friends, they've gotten a lot of advice, probably most of it not great, maybe some of it good, but those are things that work for other people, maybe, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to work for this couple in distress. So everyone has heard this, never go to bed angry. Why? Like, some people need that time to process. Now, what might have been great for, grandparents, well, we agreed to never go to bed angry.
Right.
Hey, that could have been wonderful for them. But, for a grandkid, the idea of never going to bed angry means they've been in this fight, they're tired, they want to go to bed, and now this other person that they've been fighting with won't let them go to bed. They might need that time to kind of emotionally unwind and process and think things through, so they could actually be denied what they need in order for things to get better, because someone is following advice from someone else that may have been great advice for them, but terrible advice for, like, this couple in distress. So that idea of our relationships don't have to look like, be like, feel like anybody else's relationship is really important. That's the living relationship. That is that living orchid of making it unique to you and your partner, right, as opposed to it just being this, assembly line relationship that looks like, feels like everybody else's relationship. So those are things that I address with people, is like, what type of relationship are you even trying to have right now? With ending that, a lot of the problems just simply aren't going to be resolved. So people find themselves fighting. They're going, if you've been fighting about that for 15 years, it's because it has not been resolved for 15 years. And it may not be resolvable. That too is a very important thing. Is this resolvable? Is one person trying to get the other to like fundamentally change their personality? And it's not resolvable.
Yes, it's also I think the values, because I think being able to communicate values early on, and that values change too. I think that's like the thing that is most challenging sometimes, is that you look, it's like, but you didn't believe that before, and that's the thing that is, I know for me was like shocking, was if when initially values were this thing. And it could also be, I think it was both that her values were very much like at first more aligned with mine, because it was a people pleaser type of a dynamic of like that. No, I want you to like me, and so there was that. I will be more aligned, and then over time, the more rather what happened is more of the real values came out, and our incompatibility became more apparent, where it's like the before in the early stages, you if you have that, I've always been very like blunt, like where I am, for the most part I am who you see, because for me I can't fathom like not like that's just me. And so but from somebody's perspective, the opposite perspective is that I've always had to perform to feel loved. That's the other perspective, and so that is generally what I was initially interacting with, was that. And so for me, the big shocker was always like, those are your values, and that might be a little bit of a different scenario, but the scenario in which over time values do change, even in people who are more stable in their values, that's something that can happen. And it's still one of the things that when I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, like I can't imagine it, but that happens even to me. And so that also can, so over time you might be less compatible than you were in the beginning, and that's why it feels that way. And I think that idea of like I want that old person back isn't realistic, because we change like as human beings throughout I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, right? And much less 15 years ago. And so people who've been married for that long, and maybe in the beginning were very compatible in their values, over time as they've experienced life in their own unique way, their values have shifted along with that, and so now they're not the same people anymore. And so the question of compatibility should always, I think, and periodically be spoken about openly, and hopefully that there's an environment in which you can say those things. But that's the challenge.
And again, a lot to unpack there. So,
Sorry.
but no. This is like this is great. These are conversations I wish everyone was having all the time. Like what you just said, I wish was a part of everyone's conversation with friends and family. Something I explain to couples is people will grow over time. And in a relationship, people can grow together. They can also grow apart. And it doesn't mean that anyone is wrong or bad, but in values, the point that you made about values is so important, because very often people treat or like values like they're etched in stone. And the values that we have as a 19-year-old are probably not the values we'll have as a 40-year-old, and probably not the values we'll have as a 60 or an 80-year-old. Our values would change because we change, life changes. Things that are happening now are challenging and reshaping values in ways that people don't even understand. We don't know what AI is. How do we factor AI into our values? No generation in humans have ever been faced with that. We are faced with that. How do we factor AI into our values? I don't know. I mean, I'm not asking for an answer like Josh Lopez right now. I mean, but that's a question a lot of people are asking right now. So yes, so getting back to human beings, yep, we can grow and change over time, and we can grow together, we can grow apart. And something that I encourage couples to do, and almost no one does it, because people tell me it feels artificial and constructed, and I go, well, that's okay that it feels artificial and constructed. And that everything in your home is constructed. It's okay that something be constructed, but I say take an hour once a week, no phones, no tablets, no distractions, and just simply talk about the relationship. Do relationship maintenance, do minor relationship maintenance before major relationship maintenance is required. So most people, if you have a car, you change the oil in your car periodically, you get the brakes changed, tires rotated, things like do minor things so there's not a big thing later on. And I don't know any people that are honestly so busy that they can't do that. And also, if you are that busy, that tells me a lot about the value you place on your relationship. Is it important enough to take care of? And I mean, for some people, it's an hour less of doom scrolling, which that in itself is good form. But is your relationship important enough to take care of? And it might need some, you might, need some outside help. So like couples therapy might be a necessary thing to resolve some things or gain some insights or process through something. But, the idea of spending an hour maintaining what you say is the most important thing in your life, the fact that people can't do that is generally perplexing to me. Well, how important is your relationship if your relationship isn't worth an hour a week?
Right. That's wow. There's a lot of questions I could ask there. I'm trying to figure out which one first. But um, I think that the there's a lot of uncertainty, especially when coming to couples counseling, at least for me. And I think one of the mistakes was waiting until things were on fire to go to couples therapy, because now there's this, like, what do you call it? There's now so many things stacked that it was almost as though, and I think I said this to you last time, it's almost as though when we went, it was just as like a check of like we tried that before ending it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think one of the mistakes was waiting that long, and the alarm should have been rung sooner. And I think that was another thing that in hindsight I look back and go, that was probably one of the reasons too, is you kind of put it in a situation in which it was going to be very challenging to undo if that was the plan. And I don't think, when subconsciously, I do think that it was kind of like a subconscious, we did that, we tried that,
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's something you see.
Oh, very often I see couples that it is checking a box on their way out the door for one of them. Well, I tried, couples therapy, and it didn't work, and it that way it's almost a sense of, yep, I gave it the old college try, but it just wasn't working, and I saw a therapist and did the things, and I've said with couples, and it was very clear to me by at least one of them, yep, this is done. Like, this relationship is just absolutely done. And getting into therapy beforehand is important. Sometimes people recognize a relationship isn't going to work, and couples therapy is really about, well, how do you have an amicable, civil ending to this relationship? It does not have to be scorched earth. And the fact that relationships end in scorched earth for some couples, not all, like, that scorched earth is about hurt. Someone or both people are hurt, and they're just like, I'm gonna hurt you as much as I can. And every relationship doesn't have to end like that. They don't. So even helping people understand that, yeah, sometimes people grow apart, and our values shift, and that's just part of being human. And you're not the person that they were 15 years ago. When people will say, oh, that's not the person that I married. True. That's not the person that you married. That's this person that's here today. And at some point, they stop being the person that you married, but also you may have stopped being the person that they married. And if that's not recognized and adjusted for over time, then of course, someone looking back at who someone was 15 or 20 years ago, no one is who they were 15 or 20 years ago. Also, no one is who they're going to be 15 or 20 years from now. So having that real life feedback and adjustment in relationships is so important. And it's possible when the foundation of the relationship is a strong foundation. Not all relationships have a strong foundation. Like you, me, everyone that's listening to this has probably seen a couple and just thought, ooh, that is not going to last. Just the foundation of that relationship is very, very flimsy. And when it doesn't last, like none of us are supported. It's like, oh my gosh, like how long have you known each other? We met 3 days ago, we're getting married, and this is my soulmate. And oh, well, what brought you together? We're both wearing red shirts, and the moment we saw it, we knew. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck.
Yeah.
We've all seen like those foundations that we understand. Wow, there's not a lot there to build a relationship on. And we also see people that aren't willing to build a relationship. So some interesting research around arranged marriages. So some cultures have arranged marriages. Just someone says, hey, that's my kid, that's your kid. In 10 years or whatever, our kids are going to get married, and that's agreed upon, and those marriages are arranged. And those marriages start off in a very, very rocky place. But over time, they can develop into these strong, robust relationships. And what's happening is they are literally working on building the relationship, building that foundation that the relationship is going to rest on together. And so I'm not saying that, arranged marriages are the way to go. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is we need feedback in relationships. We need feedback from our partners. We need to even understand, is the environment that the relationship taking place in healthy for the relationship? You and I are both in the military. Man, the military can be rough on relationships.
Yeah.
Aren't a lot of jobs where someone says, hey, I just found out I'm going to another country for 9 months plus, and I'll be back at some point in the future. And for most of the time I'm gone, you won't know where I am. There are not a lot of jobs that have that component. People won't. Yeah.
And you hear about it in the culture, the military culture, that it's a high divorce culture.
Yeah. And so there can be incredible relationship burden and pressure in the military that many of the service members are unprepared for. So we have to adjust for that as well.
You could offer a little bit. Would you be able to repeat that again?
Yeah, I can. So there are many burdens in serving in the military that service members are not prepared for. And we, in the service, we do the best that we can to prepare people for that. But, you get a couple that's, relatively young, being in the service is, stressful in relationships, and under all but the best circumstances. And then you factor in a deployment or something like that. That's a lot of pressure for, a couple that is still building the foundation of their relationship to withstand.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors, in especially with high deployed individuals, like especially the special forces. If you hear those guys talk about, I've listened to them, many podcasts of them talk about how they went through their divorces, and some of them that were married got out because they knew how likely it was they would get divorced. And then that plays into some of the things that you had said earlier about, do they value the relationship enough to to give it more time? And so they have a choice at that point once they reach the end of their contract, which is, do I stay or do I continue this? And for those that saw the value in their relationship and said, I want to keep that, were then decided that I need to get out. And for those that wanted to keep that, that wanted to prioritize staying in, well, those relationships ultimately would fail, and very few withstand that. They do, but very few of them. It's very small percentage of long-term marriages in the special forces community specifically, but in general in the military, those relationships really struggle because there is that separation and not being able to communicate, and things are still happening when you're in the relationship. So that's the stuff that I think is hard to navigate. But generally, if you hear those guys talk about it, special forces guys are the most divorced individuals.
And unfortunately, the culture around relationships in the military is changing. But when I enlisted, the concept was, man, Air Force wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you one. Like, you would. And that's like, wow, that's kind of rough. Like, and so you talk about, a meta message there is, your family's not important. Like, there is that, message, and I don't believe that that's the official position of any branch of the, any branch of the military, but the cultural message is, hey, work first, family second.
Yeah.
And there seems to be, some healthy shifting around that, but that was a message that I got. That was a message that my peers got. That was a message that I probably passed on to others, work first, family second. And it's difficult to expect the best from people all the time if they're in an environment where their families and their relationships are being placed second.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. I think we have a few more minutes here.
Sure.
I think what we can end it off on is, what's something that you wish you knew about being in a relationship early on that would have helped you prolong, or rather know when, if things were salvageable or if it was time to move on?
One of the theories, emotional focus therapy by Sue Johnson, it really helped me understand that emotional awareness for myself, partners, is just so crucial. Very often it is this is a big aspect of therapy. It's not what we're saying, it is what we're feeling that really matters, and how to understand what I was feeling, how to understand and create space for others, like what they're feeling. That is so huge. I mean, that has revolutionized couples therapy. That idea of being, more emotion focused as opposed to, cognitive focused, like what's going on. And it's almost ridiculously simple, like what's going on in our heart compared to what's going on in our head. So, we tend to be, like in our head, and then other theorists figure out, like, man, what's going on in our bodies matters. So like, it's not it's not just our head, it's not just our heart, it's not just our body, it is like all of that. And understanding that, it would have transformed every relationship that I've been in. The other thing that I recognize as a therapist, something that I wish I knew, and it's something that I emphasize to others, is the idea of just going back. If you notice something and you didn't say anything about it, and to go like, 2 days ago, I said this, or you did that, you seem like you were stressed, or just to go back, as opposed to, well, that's done. That's like it's in the past. Oh, we can go back. We can always go back and go, I was racing out and you were saying something and I was late for this meeting and I didn't give you the attention that you clearly wanted at that time. And, first, I'm sorry about that. And I want to hear what it is that you were going to say. That's so huge as opposed to, well, that was a couple of days ago. They'll get over it.
Right.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you again for coming back on, and I hope that people who are listening, who might be struggling with relationships as we speak, and maybe are looking for some answers to their questions, have found some in this one. And thank you, Curley, again for answering those questions for us.
Oh, absolutely, man. It was a pleasure. I hope that someone, got, something from this. Like I said, talk to your therapist, ask your therapist questions, ask your therapist all the things that I brought up. What's their theoretical orientation for couples therapy? How do they envision relationships? What's a reasonable outcome from couples therapy? And for anyone that's in a relationship, treat your relationship like it matters.
Well, that'll be this episode, and for any further developments on that one, we'll stay tuned. There's more to
All right.
come.
All right, man. Thanks so much, brother. Appreciate it.
No problem.